My goal tonight is going to be hopefully completely change the way that you perceive deviance escalation in general. And we're going to get really deep into that. Now, with all that said, I want to give you guys a practical example. That's a lot of what we're going to be looking at. I want to give you guys as much tactical, real field things and practical examples that you can go out and start using right away. D1, we have a harmless kind of rule questioning that's going to occur. And what this does is it starts to allow us to establish a tone. It signals to the person that this conversation isn't just going to follow some kind of normal script that they're used to. It triggers novelty in the person's brain, and it starts to allow them to be open to new possibilities of what is the context of this interaction. Then we have D2, which is shared social criticism. And here you're going to go a step deeper by not just acknowledging reality, but actually critiquing what it is. This observation, maybe about society or people, is going to start to completely change the way that they feel in this moment. And next we have the private truth admission. This is the first rung where things get really personal. Maybe not deeply personal, but personal enough that most people wouldn't say it in just a normal, everyday, kind of superficial level conversation. And this is the really critical point where their brain is going to start to run a calculation, which says, do I match or do I stay behind my mask and stay hidden? Next, we move on to D4, which is where we have a taboo mention. And you name something that exists kind of in the shadows of our mind. It allows the person's brain to feel like this is not a performance here at all. This is me allowing myself to be completely who I am. And this is what opens up the final stage, which is D5, where we have an intimate internal reveal. You reveal something so personal and so internal that it creates a bond that you can't just manufacture or purchase with money, or even necessarily just say some magical words to achieve. This is a state that's being transferred to this person, which is allowing them to feel completely present, safe, and as though they can be the unfiltered version of themselves. So not that long ago, I was at a NCI Live event, and I kind of watched someone run up this entire ladder. It was a student who was there. So they opened up at D1. They made a light observation about, it's funny how everyone at these events kind of defaults to the same three questions. They're always asking, what do you do? Maybe where are you from? Or how do you know Chase? Or how do you know the presenter? How did you first come across them? And then pretty elegantly, they moved to D2. It's pretty strange how people actually say or don't actually say anything real at these things a lot of the time. It's almost kind of like everyone agreed to keep this surface level kind of communication. Like there's some kind of unwritten social contract going on in the background. And the other person nodded. They leaned in slightly. And then I watched the bridge happen. So the student slowed down. They looked away for just a second. And when they looked back, their energy was completely different. It was quieter, more real. And they said something now at the D3 level. They shared a personal story about a time they realized that they'd been performing a version of themselves for years and really never even knew it themselves until they finally got to experience what it was like to live without it. And this was the point where you could see the other person's mask visibly shift. You could see it in their posture, their shoulders dropped, their breathing changed. And within just 4, maybe 5 minutes, they were at D4 talking about things that neither of them, very likely, would say in that type of setting normally. And the bond that I was able to see that formed in those 4 minutes was deeper than many people build in months and oftentimes in years of kind of your normal social surface level interaction. And that's an example of what deviance escalation done right looks like. There's not some kind of force or manipulation, just a systemic creation of conditions where honesty finally becomes easier for that person's brain than performance does. They didn't feel like some kind of a technique was run on them. They felt like they just had one of the most authentic conversations that they've ever had in years. They finally felt really seen, and that feeling of being truly seen by another person is probably one of the most powerful experiences that a human being can have. It's not control over someone, it's access to them, real access, the kind that lives below the mask that many people never even realize that they're wearing. As you move up the ladder of deviance, the person's openness increases really because the social norm structure is being systemically relaxed. The suggestibility increases as a byproduct of that. Someone who's taken off their mask is no longer filtering the incoming data through their usual defenses. The shared deviance really is creating kind of a social bond. We're allowing the person to internally say something along the lines of, it feels like we see the same things. The emotional depth that emerges at D3 and above is something that is going to activate those elements on those two models in a way that surface conversations will truly never touch. If deviance escalation is not occurring, what are the things that we can look at to understand why this is not working out in maybe the way that we thought it would? If people are engaged with social observations, but they won't go to that deeper personal level, it is almost always going to be the permission bridge where you're failing. You're essentially jumping from one step to the other instead of allowing that smooth transitional bridge to occur. And what I want you to focus on here is to slow down, really let the transition breathe and show them that it is safe before you ask them to go another level deeper. If you're getting a little bit further, maybe to D3, but it's starting to feel forced, almost like you're pulling teeth, take a moment and look at yourself first. Are you actually sharing something real, or are you just performing some type of vulnerability because you know it's the right thing to do? I promise you, if you are performing, they can feel it. Our brains have been trained for thousands of years to be able to recognize performance and authenticity and true vulnerability in others. They will match your level of performance. Ask yourself, what am I bringing to this interaction that I'm not acknowledging? Do I have some kind of hidden agenda? Or maybe is there something I want from this person? Maybe not even fully willing to admit to myself. Dependence actually makes the outcome less likely to occur, not more likely. And why? That's because deviance escalation is essentially a mirror. Whatever you haven't dealt with in yourself is going to show up on exactly how you run this ladder. The technique will amplify it, and the person across from you is going to feel that maybe even before you do. So the ladder works when you do. That is the deal that you need to be willing to make with yourself. And this is something that applies really to all influence in general. When I was younger, there was this moment, and it was everything I thought I knew about myself finally collapsed. It felt like the ground under my feet just almost wasn't even there anymore. For a second, I felt like I was just free falling, and it wasn't just peace, it was real, just quiet. Almost like every story I'd been telling myself finally stopped mid-sentence, and in that little silence, not about what was going to happen, certainty about who I was without all of this performance and this needing to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. So what I'm going to teach you right now is how to find the emotional current that's already stored in the person's body. It's something that they generated themselves from their own life, their own experiences, and you'll learn exactly how to direct it and how to attach it to whatever thing that you want. Because emotion that's already in the body is 1,000 times more powerful than anything you could try to manufacture from the outside. Every person you will ever interact with is walking around with a library of emotional charged memories. The nervous system remembers that exact feeling, and it can retrieve it in a matter of seconds if you're able to do your job correctly. You're building a bridge from a real body, feeling, experience to a future state, and the brain is able to walk across it because it can't tell what the difference is.